They say our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. My next guest has literally coined the phrase, that sucked, now what? Neeta Bhushan is a powerhouse of a woman who knows exactly what it means to fall and rise, and not just rise, to thrive. She's an international bestseller, motivational speaker, citizen of the world, wife, mother. Neeta is here with me today to talk to me about what exactly is resilience and how to hone in the resilience when life decides to ultimately suck. So grab your coffee, matcha, chai, or whatever you're into. Sit back, relax, because I know you're going to love this. Neeta, thank you so much for coming on to They Say It Takes a Village. It is an absolute pleasure having you.
Oh my gosh, I've been waiting for this.
Me too. Honestly, it's been a long, long time coming. We connected, like a year and a half ago?
I think so.
Something like that.
It was crazy, yes.
And I was literally waiting for you to sort of touch down UAE side.
Oh my gosh.
Until dragging you out of here and putting you on that chair.
And here we are.
I know. I'm so excited. I'm so excited about today's conversation.
Likewise.
So obviously, for those who have just sort of tuned in, whether they've clicked on because they found the title of the episode intriguing, or they're probably familiar with all the incredible things you do and your work, how would you go about describing yourself, what you do for a living, and the conversation we're going to have today?
Yeah, I would say I am the queen of reinvention, the queen of connection, brave conversations, emotional mastery, expert extraordinaire that's obsessed with wellness and that's committed to supporting you brave all of the areas in your life.
Yeah.
And I would say more recently, really committed to helping women and mothers live a more softer life with purpose and really regulating our nervous system. Because I feel like we just give so much and we've got to give back to ourselves.
100%. Do you find that this is something that you've always been into?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like, recently the buzzwords around, emotional regulation, emotional intelligence really, and nervous system regulation has been, it's been a buzzword, but I feel like I've been talking about this for almost the last 10 years. And it's honestly been shaped by, my upbringing. And I think that a lot of times we fall into our dharma, like our life's purpose, because either we have gone through something really big and we've survived on the other side. We have either gone through or watched somebody go through an illness, and so that becomes like our passion. Or we go through something where, it's something that we need to solve in the world, and that becomes kind of our North Star. And so I feel like it becomes that synergy. It depends on you whether or not you want to take the reins for it. And I feel like that has been the through line, honestly, for my life.
I feel there was obviously with today's conversation, we're focusing specifically, not really specifically, but we're touching a lot on resilience. I think this definitely has become a bit of a buzzword and something that's been almost been given as a badge of honor for either extreme burnout, trauma, whatever that person has gone through. But in your own words and in your opinion, what and how would you define true resilience?
Well, quite a few years ago when I was writing my very first book, I would define resilience as the ability to be strong and rise above anything that, life is tossing your way. While all of those things are great, I feel like, I've expanded that definition to now really include the parts in your life that allow you to break. And if I have this glass here, if we take the word resiliere, the Latin root of resilience, and if I take that word, and the Latin root means to bounce back. But if I take this glass that's in front of us, and the glass is really tough and it's strong and it's obviously holding our water, and I'll just let it go and shatter it here, it's going to break into a million pieces. But if we take that bouncy ball that our kids get from those birthday parties,
those horrendous balls that bounce off the walls.
They bounce off the walls. They
can't catch them.
They have enormous give to it. They have enormous agility. They have enormous flexibility. That's what true resilience is to be able to bend in the face of adversity, setbacks, challenges, and then mold and shape your character to be, the next iteration of who you're meant to be. And so we see these, and I don't know, I have a 3-year-old daughter. So she's very much into gymnastics. She's like, Mama, I'm going to do a backflip. And I'm like, you've not, like, okay, let's try to do a front flip first,
Roly-poly.
But so the thing is they're so flexible and bendable. And as we get older, as we kind of go through breakups and heartbreaks and challenges and rejection and, the resentment and, just failed expectations in life, we become more rigid and more rigid and more rigid.
Yeah.
And then where is that softness? And so now my definition of resilience is it is being soft, it is being agile, it is being able to bend during life's toughest moments so that you can mold the next version of yourself that is stronger, that is more capable of holding more and expanding your capacity to not only feel, but also heal through lifing.
Absolutely. I mean, you've said that it's not about powering through. That's not your definition of resilience. It's that ability to be agile and almost absorb it.
Well, in a way, if you think about, science, and we've both got science backgrounds as a former cosmetic dentist. I mean, what do we learn in science? When something is put under stress, when we put a diamond under stress, it's not going to break or crack. It's going to change the shape. It's going to absorb that energy. And so when we're doing the hard things, like having a brave conversation, like breaking up with that boss, or, speaking your truth for the first time. Well, what are we doing? We're expanding our ability to do hard things that will also allow us to absorb whatever that energy is, but then make us a better and more resilient version of ourselves because we said yes to the discomfort, because we're leaning into the discomfort instead of shoving it under a rug or putting it in the back closet.
That's the thing. And I find a lot of the times, I think there is this fear almost when it comes to resilience or powering through or doing that, you lose who you are as a person. And I think that is the ultimate fear, isn't it? That to have resilience, you've kind of let a certain part of you go, I guess.
Well, I love that. And I also think because, when we think of the word resilience, we think, okay, this powering through this, we've got to be tough and strong. We see all of these memes.
I'm going to shrug it off.
Yeah, and it's very masculine.
Absolutely.
And it's very like, okay, I'm going to go into the military and I'm going to see this very buff guy on TV and that's who I have to be. So many of us, I was actually teaching a workshop yesterday and I asked, and it was a bunch of educators, and I said, how do you react when things don't go your way or when you're really having a stressful day or a stressful season and somebody just says something to you and just cuts you off or just very mean to you, and majority of the room, half of the room is like, oh, I'll just walk away or, I'll brush it off. But the other half of the room said, okay, I'll start crying. And so when it's like, giving ourselves permission to actually feel and not judge ourselves for actually feeling that emotion, because crying is a release.
Yep.
It's a release. And that's what it is. It's cortisol leaving our body, that stress leaving our body through our tears. And so, this notion of having to have it all together is a fallacy, because in the breaking down or in the acknowledging of 3 words, I need help, can potentially save somebody else's life. It can actually change the trajectory of your life. as well.
100%. Just on the crying and on the tears part, I feel it's just a personal thing for me. I always think sometimes, even in my other part of my life, the corporate side, I was always told never show your emotions.
Yeah.
Never, and you hear it all the time. Don't be emotional when you are, facing a potential conflict. Well, I do understand that obviously there is a time and a place, but there have been lots of moments at work where I could feel tears
Of
coming up,
course.
and
Of
then I would
course.
just push them down.
Hmm.
And then somehow they get almost transformed into some other, not a very good reaction to something completely unrelated.
Of course, you're suppressing those emotions. So guess what?
Exactly.
It's going to come out because what's a normalized emotion to have? Anger.
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
you're
The
better
tears
off.
thing, don't
Yeah,
ever
don't
show
do
them.
that.
It's almost like you've sort of revealed this weak spot that people will take advantage of, which is really not the case.
But then anger is okay. Passive aggressive is
Yeah.
okay. Resentment is
These
okay.
toxic traits. Yeah.
Just ignoring somebody and giving them the silent treatment is okay. Where a lot of times, rage and anger are just cover ups for basically grief and sadness at the very bottom layer. So,
The Nita sitting in front of me is just powerful, resilient. You're full of confidence. I mean, you've really what you're projecting is empathy and confidence and
mm,
sort of all of these wonderful things that you honestly would want your children to have
mm,
as they get older. But after having read your story and your journey, that wasn't always the case.
right. Yeah.
What was the younger Nita like?
Ooh, she was, she was I think she was confused and she had a lot going on in her life. I think at 10 years old, that's when everything shifted for her because, the playful, bubbly, fun loving Neeta had to grow up and had to be a caretaker to her mom at 10, who was going through breast cancer. And she was the oldest of her two younger brothers. And so, in her Indian father's eyes, growing up in the US, it was a lot of pressure because you're the eldest daughter, you are, the firstborn, and you're supposed to take care of everybody else. And so, little Neeta at 10 was very different from little Neeta at 7. Little Neeta at 7 really loved to play the piano and she was dancing and, very performative in nature. And then yeah, at 10 it was taking care of the household. It was growing up really fast. It was, at 16 when my mom transitioned, her cancer had spread. It was very, very a dark time. And I had so many different responsibilities. I was told I was resilient. I was told, you're so strong, keep it up. Like as if I had to keep the peace and keep the face because, you're in the US and keeping up with the Joneses. And I don't think anyone in our like family circle and family friend circle had gone through a loss. And so there are these kind of unsaid expectations of how is everyone supposed to react around you? I was a junior in high school, and all we want to do is fit in
Absolutely.
high school. But here I am after school, going to the hospital settings, being there for your mom, going to, I had several, after school jobs to support the family. And then a year after, we would be struck with another tragedy. My brother, DJ, would have an asthma attack literally in front of his school grounds. And it was immediately a year after my mom died, just kind of out of nowhere. I mean, there's, of course, spiritual sense to that because they were very close.
Yeah.
And so, and that just kind of took our family.
How old were you then?
I was just a year older. I was 17, a senior in high school, applying to all the schools and got into every one of them and just remembering I couldn't leave. I had to resume my duties as the eldest daughter and ended up going to, a great school in Chicago very close, to my family, but ended up working 3 jobs just to support my family, just because my dad was in this, deep depression. He had lost his wife and his son, who was only 15, within a year. And this was on my youngest brother's 12th birthday. So,
My gosh, Neeta.
yeah, it was intense. And if that wasn't bad enough, 2 years after that, we would get the call that my dad had stage 4 lung cancer. So within about those, 3 to 4 years, I would lose my mom, my brother, and my dad. And, just shy of my 19th birthday, I was 18. And so it was a very tumultuous, tragic time. And I feel like that's when I started to learn, all right, buckle up. You're resilient. I was told you're resilient all the time, and I honestly channeled that to fuel me ahead. Because I think a lot of times when you go through so much grief all at once, and as a child, there's 2 ways to go about it. There's one way where you can get consumed by all of the coping mechanisms that are unhealthy in life. And thankfully, I had the other coping mechanism, which was busyness and workaholic and, for lack of a better word, trying to prove to my, now passed on parents that I was going to make them proud. And so this would kind of project me into my 20s, just kind of running to make a name for myself, running to make sure that I was not going to be the pity party of my family. So it's almost this overcompensation of the people pleasing, of the doing, the being yes for everybody. And, it took me all of my 20s, yes, from the outside and on outside paper and outside world, I was, this poster child for, wow, look at Neeta, look at what she's accomplished and done.
Exactly. What she's gone through, and look how far she's come.
But on the inside, I was still empty.
Did you have any counseling, any level of therapy and support? I mean, it's a lot.
It was a lot.
For a young person. Yeah.
It was a lot. And I think so, yes, and for anybody listening to this who is like, okay, I need to do something. I'm going through something similar. So definitely look at the therapists that you're going to find and you're going to work with, because I think the therapist that we had, my dad was only doing the best that he could with the resources that he had. And so I think they were mostly trying to prevent us from probably harming ourselves. It wasn't as fruitful of therapy. And I think we were just in survival mode at that time. It was like, let's get through it.
Also, I think in the mind of a child, it's quite difficult to compartmentalize what you actually need.
Yeah.
Children, I would say 17 is still a child, to be honest.
Of course.
And I would think, there's fear of almost who's going to look after me.
Yeah.
That element. There's also fear of, now what? Obviously there, I think as you get older, the empathy does kick in as an adult. Yeah. But as a child, it's very much self-centered. And to be able to find somebody to kind of discuss that openly and talk about the fears, I don't know. I'm not a therapist, but I would just think that, it would be to support that.
It was a lot of group therapy. And I think what really helped us and supported us was our community. Yeah. And to your point, it takes a village. Yeah. Everyone from my Filipino side to my Indian side really kind of raised up, and just, we had in all different faiths just coming together, praying for us, holding, small groups for us. And just, my father was such a big believer in just spirituality. And so we were exposed to a lot of spirituality. And And that was kind of the saving grace. And I still remember when my mom was sick, especially even after my dad was diagnosed and he spent also months in the ICU. It's like I have a I have a thing against going to the hospitals that I wrote in my newest book. But we had friends that would literally spend their weekends and like play the guitar. We would do karaoke. We would play game nights. And that was very rare for like a teenager to have friends at the hospital setting for both of her parents. And so I just recalled still being a community builder and a community connector, even at that age. And that's kind of what propelled me to just be natural in creating community because, I had to really create family that I had lost. And so a lot of my actual therapy and kind of personal growth and personal development would happen literally a decade later when I would be, in a very tumultuous first marriage that would, preventing me from shoving things under a rug because for that decade, it was like my whole goal was let me just get out of this dark tunnel and I'm going to take my brother with. And that's just what it's going to be. And the carrot at the end of that stick or the beautiful clouds at the end of the tunnel was, for me, it was being a dentist. And then from there, my practice. And, it was very success driven because of course that's what I grew up with from my parents.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize until much, much later. And now what I talk about is true success is the inner peace that we, give ourselves.
What do you think was one of the biggest lessons grief has taught you?
Oh, wow. Well, I just recently did a TEDx talk about this. And,
I saw it.
And perhaps maybe we could
brilliant.
link it in the show notes for everyone. That was the first time I actually did a talk in that way. And I think the biggest lesson that, grief taught me, there were 3 that I shared in the TED talk, but just the one is that, friendships, relationships, more than fame, more than wealth, are the longest predictor of longevity. And
100%.
And
community.
And community. And it goes back to, everything that you've built. And it was something that I felt for my entire life. But then to see the longest running study from Dr. Robert Waldinger from Harvard, he conducted this study, for about 80 years and literally following all of these people on what were the hallmarks of a great life. And it's having community.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's what has saved my life. It's what saved, I know now having some of my own institutes and schools, this is what gets people out of the depression, out of the angst, out of their own way when they have people that support. And, just seeing some of my dad's best friends who were my like uncles growing up, the family friends, I literally looked to them for advice. And now there's research showing that like your kids won't necessarily listen to you, but they'll listen to
somebody else who is a trusted adult connected to the family. 100%.
Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, because to this day, I still have utmost respect for the uncles in my life.
1000%. It's mentorship. It is to have isn't it? I think I read somewhere that, in certain tribes, you've got a child that has to go out away from their sort of, immediate caregivers with a potential a guide or somebody like that. And they end up basically forming that relationship and preparing them for the world. Totally. To have that level of trust and support from somebody who's a little bit outside your immediate family, but to also be completely there for you. It's what it's all about. I mean, that's the whole point. I think it takes a village to raise a child is one thing. It takes a village to actually go through life. Life is, you aren't ever supposed to be in isolation as human beings. And I think that is just proven time and time again. And even when they do these studies on centenarians and blue zones, their biggest contributor to such a long life and longevity is having a very active community.
Absolutely. And, before we started this recording, you had
Yeah.
asked, how has it been moving to Dubai?
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I feel like the West gets so wrong, is that everything is individualistic, and, we have to process and be away from our families and, cut out all the people in our life and just go at it alone. Well, there's no wonder that, 1 in 3 are experiencing loneliness and anxiety and depression.
And it's an epidemic.
And it's an epidemic.
Yeah.
And it's like some of my friends, they don't even leave their homes because their work is online. Everything is online. And then they wonder why they're feeling so lonely. And even though I said to you, I'm definitely feeling so overwhelmed, but it's like in a good way.
Yeah.
Just because you're meeting so many people who are like-minded. Everyone here is an expat, and it's just this loving, inclusive nature where I don't think I have, and I've lived in several cities in the US, I have not experienced that
I have
at
to
all.
say, on a side note, the UAE is
Yeah.
a unicorn of a place.
Oh, it is.
We talked about it. I've been living here my whole life, and you touched on a point, the fact that there's this inclusivity. My son is in a school with 20 odd kids in the class, all from different backgrounds and nationalities and religions and beliefs.
Yeah.
And then everybody is so supportive and celebrates every tradition,
Everything.
holiday.
Everything.
Where in the world do you find that in such peace, harmony, and respect?
Yeah.
Shout out to the UAE, because
They've done it.
It is the most beautiful place where there is a level of harmony that you want your children to grow up in.
Oh my gosh. I mean, and we had no idea. We knew, but you don't know until you live here.
Yeah.
And now I have people just messaging me all the time saying, I didn't know how diverse it is. And I'm like, I've been trying to tell you all that.
It's just this tolerance and the beauty of accepting and understanding. And I think there's so much curiosity about other cultures, which is what I like. It's the curiosity to learn more and to be a part of it and to just celebrate it with everybody else.
And there's no
divisiveness.
There's no the separation. There's no like the hierarchy of I'm better than you, or it's pure reverence, which is just, it's been so beautiful to experience.
Complete tangent.
Yeah.
We love Dubai, clearly. But just to bring you back a little bit on grief, because I feel like we can do a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have on grief?
I think that people feel like if they are having a grief episode, or they're feeling really sad, or God forbid, they have to stop whatever they're doing because they have just this overwhelming feeling of loss or heartbreak, that they don't allow themselves to go there. Yeah. They don't allow themselves to go there because, well, what if I get stuck there? What if I'm just like a terrible mess and I can't get through it?
I can't get through it.
I can't get through it. But here's the part that people, don't understand, is that science shows that it takes 60 to 90 seconds to fully feel an emotion. And so I was just sharing this with another, colleague the other day, who's actually going through losing her father. And it's a disease. And so, she's like, for the longest time, I thought I could keep myself busy. For the longest time, I could just power through and avoid. But now it's just getting to the point where I just need to sit. And in my book, I talk about sitting in the suck. And many times you can actually schedule your grief. You can schedule it for 5 minutes in the car, in the parking lot, and just cry and scream and moan. And fine, if you don't want anybody to see you, keep a pillow there and then just put it over your face. I know that, or go to the bathroom stall and just like cover your, there's so many different ways, but to allow yourself this process. And it's like, all right, we schedule when we are going to go and, meditate, or do
We schedule everything.
our breath work, or, you know, go to the gym. Why can't we schedule our grieving practice and to allow yourself some of those sad songs that probably, you know, in the 90s you would like sing to and like cry to for a heartbreak or something like that. What if you allowed yourself to create a sad playlist? I've literally shared this in some of my circles of songs that do elicit that emotion so that you can bring up whatever needs to clear. Because I guarantee you, after the 60 to 90 seconds or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, see how you feel when you do that exercise. I guarantee you will feel lighter. You will feel just like, oh wow, I've moved that out of my body, and okay, it's not with me. I can move on with my day. It doesn't have to be part of my day the entire day. But what happens if we keep ruminating and keep suppressing it, it's going to come out in different ways.
Absolutely. I think it's so true. I just keep thinking to myself, I mean, we all have loved ones, and the idea of, God forbid, something happening to them, it's almost like you hear it all the time. People say, I don't know how I would be able to get on with life. My life would stop.
Yeah.
And I think that is the big one about grief.
Yeah.
About how, my God, it's making me so emotional for some odd reason. It's quite confronting.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, you almost think, every time you think of something potentially horrible going wrong, no, I don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
Because it's such an overwhelming emotion that you just think to yourself, me personally as a human being, I don't think I can live life.
Yeah. Well, because life will potentially stop.
Absolutely.
Right? And what are we if we don't have that chase? What are we, or who are we if that happens? And I guarantee you that's where the softness comes in. That's where we can allow ourselves to perhaps break down, because, you know, as the Japanese art of kintsugi, when we're kind of, you know, putting the pieces back together, where it's a beautiful masterpiece.
Absolutely. I think we can all agree that our personal style changes throughout our lives. The way I dress now is very different to the way I used to dress in my 20s. Our minds change, our body changes, and to be honest, that is a completely normal fact of life. As you all know, Wear That Now is a proud partner of this podcast and a huge factor to my ever-changing personal style. They make having a personal stylist so accessible, where your comfort, your style, your budget, and occasion are fully considered when they select a bespoke box of looks that gets sent straight to your doorstep for you to try on the clothes in the comfort of your own home. What I love the most really is their flexibility. The outfits that I don't love, I simply return them, and the ones that I do, I keep them. So if you're looking to change up your personal style but don't really know where to start, head over to their Instagram account, which is at wear.that.now, and connect with your very own personal stylist. Okay, so let's say, I'm just working through your timeline now. So we've got 20-year-old Neeta.
Yeah.
She's a dentist, a full doctor.
She's about 27, 28.
27, 28. Then you go on to open your own practice.
Yeah.
Then you get married and you fall in love.
Mm-hmm.
And you think to yourself, okay, you know what? That's it. You know, I'm on the way to a happily ever after.
Yeah.
And then boom.
Yeah. I open up with this chapter in the book detailing kind of and chronicling kind of the night that I made the decision to leave my fairy tale.
I read that New Year's Eve
marriage. Yeah. And I think for a lot of women that are listening to this, you know, maybe you have a friend or a sister or a loved one that's gone through something like this. I think for me, there were so many red flag signs.
Can I ask, like, what? I'm pretty sure anyone who's listening, you know, they could be in a situation where they've gone through so much and then are listening and tuning in now and thinking, you know what? I am in a difficult situation in my marriage or partnership or whatever it is. I can see the red flags.
Yeah.
What were the ones that kept coming up?
So, oh wow, it was it was a very emotional, then became physical, abusive relationship. You know, emotional, mental, all of it. And so you realize when you start doing kind of your own personal work, I realized I was in a codependent relationship with a narcissist who was also a sociopath that I actually attracted because I needed to learn about self-love for myself. And I think here's the thing. There's so many nuances to this, but at the core of it, we all want love. And I think at the core of it, especially when you've gone through so much,
I was going to say.
and you didn't, and I wanted to create a family that I had lost. Of course I did.
How old were you?
I was, I was like 20,
sort of late 20s,
26 when we had met in dental school. And so, and this was, and I had always been in overlap relationships as I was a teenager. So I didn't really know how to be alone. So if you are one of those people listening or watching this that doesn't like to be alone, that maybe you find the next partner just when you're about to break up with the other one and you overlap. It's kind of like this whole J-Lo situation. Yeah. She's constantly like
serial
dater on top of the other or whatever, but there's truth to that. Can you actually allow yourself to be alone and allow yourself to grieve the loss, because there is another loss. Yeah. And I didn't want to go through grieving another loss. So in my mind, I would rationalize, and we think, oh, I'm gonna change that person. I'm gonna save them, because you go into that martyr complex, and this is kind of the codependent narcissist pattern.
Yeah, I'm going to be the one to
change that person. Yeah. And that person is probably love bombing you, because those are the traits of a narcissist, right?
Just kind of hook you in.
And they hook you in, and so yeah, and you feel so great about yourself. But what if, and that's why I actually created a whole nonprofit to teach women and girls how to love themselves, how to have that confidence from within, so that you wouldn't fall prey to these kinds of tactics, and you could choose a person that loves you and respects you, that doesn't expect you to change, but accepts who you are as their equal. And I think that's the missing link. A lot of women throughout the years, because I would do a lot of this work, and it was a lot of philanthropic work that was a big passion of mine, and a big healing part of my journey. I would talk on a lot of these panels. And the question I would get asked is, well, why do most women stay? Well, they stay because, they're so afraid of the other side. They're so afraid of who they could be on the other side. They're so afraid if they are financially entangled with this person, that what's going to happen? Am I going to be on the streets?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's difficult, isn't it? You sort of, you put your lives together, mm-hmm. and then you almost, you have to sort of tear your life apart, figuratively speaking. So it is quite difficult. And then if you've got, obviously, a narcissist who's got their own ways of really spinning a little web around you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I went through.
Yeah.
It becomes hard to detangle, because they believe that you will never leave them. And they believe you'll never have the inner confidence to actually leave and stand up for yourself. And so there were a lot of, things got really dark and messy, and but I think in all, I learned tremendous leadership, and it was a lot of things that I didn't really believe in myself. And it's one of the key reasons how I was able to scale my dental practice so fast and was able to sell it. And a few years after that, but it was immense growth. And when I mean immense growth, at one point there were, lawsuits trying to steal my practice away, because again, there's all these kinds of different, it just got really dirty. So for anybody that is, watching this and needs that support, I think, first rally people who will support you. And I remember just kind of at my wits, and it was December 31st, 2011. And the days before that, I had a girlfriend who had witnessed how I was. And she said, you don't have to be like our parents. My mom is still walking on eggshells around my dad. She's like, you're not even 30. She's like, my mom's in her 50s. you can leave. And it was like, it takes a girlfriend to like, plant that seed. And then of course, other things then I talk about very vividly in the book, what happened, as a result after that. But I still remember who that girlfriend was. And to this day, I still, just honor her because she was that angel, that many times we all have, but many times we either push those angels away or because we want to protect that partner or that person. Because everyone probably knows if you're with a good person or a bad person.
Well, I guess that's my question. A lot of the times, look, relationships, I've been married for 10 years.
Yeah.
This year, we're celebrating our 10-year wedding
Oh my God.
anniversary.
Congrats.
Thank you. And relationships aren't easy. There's a lot of give and take. And there's a lot of, everyone who's listening probably is nodding their head right now because relationships are hard work.
Yeah.
Where do you cross the line from potential bump in the road in your relationship to non-negotiables, toxic relationship that you have to leave?
Oh, wow. Yeah. If your safety, if your life is on the line, like my life was threatened. There is no way that and if your safety is being threatened, if you are feeling unsafe in your own home, if you are getting battered, no amount of physical, emotional, mental abuse should be a norm in any relationship. Those are signs that you need to leave, because if it's not going to happen to you, it might happen to your child or something else. And your safety is that number one priority. And I think that's number one. Number two, if you are thinking, okay, well, maybe we need therapy, or let's just get a coach or something, if they are not willing to go with you, that is the biggest thing, because it takes two in a relationship. And you can only go so far as to therapy and all of the things on your own and see if you can change things on your own. If that person is still constantly berating you, putting you down, shaming you, always making it seem like it's your fault, it's not a mutual, respectable relationship. And if they go as to, put you down and then, the next day, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm never going to do that again. This is like the typical, codependent, narcissistic relationship. And that's why they keep having you go back and forth, because they feel like you're going to believe that they're going to change when they're actually not. And I've had so many women in the last 10 years say the same things. And many times we have those girlfriends who are in those situations and we see it and we plant a seed, or we say, I don't really like how that person's treating you, or like, that is not normal.
You don't need to put up with this.
And you don't, but then they still stay, or they push you away because they're trying to protect whatever that is. And that's the thing. From a girlfriend's point of view, you've got to be that person that's still going to be there for her when she is ready. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be the next day. It might be a year from now. And that's okay. But when she calls you, don't say I told you so. Just be there for her. Yeah.
If you were to have a conversation with Neeta, let's say 6 months before you looked in the mirror and said, I need help, what would you say? Just that particular 31st of December.
6 months before,
or even a week before.
Yeah, I would say probably exactly what my girlfriend said. You have the rest of your life ahead of you. Like, you do not have to, like, what are you so afraid of? What are you so afraid of that if you just trust your inner gut, your intuition, your instinct, things are going to be so much better and brighter on the other side. It might be a little hard at first. You might go through some really big battles and hurdles and maybe even more challenges, but I guarantee you're going to have so much peace and freedom and just support, and people are truly supporting you.
It's that, what are you afraid of?
Yeah, it's that. And for me, it was, what will people say? Yeah. Oh my gosh, she's already been through so much and now she's divorced. And
I don't want anyone to pity me, or I don't want to
yeah.
feel any type of shame,
Or how did I
so
even pick this person?
yeah,
Like,
I don't want to have to explain myself either.
yeah. Or
So
wow,
it's
they were
quite
all so right. You know,
complex.
I should have listened to all of them. Why
Yeah.
didn't I like believe it? I would see it was around that time where Rihanna and Chris Brown, you know, had their
Yeah.
thing. And I remember seeing, I'm like, I'm not her. I'm not like Rihanna. Like, she's so strong and powerful. And and then of course, you know, I would have to go through a rabbit hole of figuring out a lot of powerful women are behind closed doors in these types of dynamics and relationships, and then they have so much shame in coming out. And it's one of the reasons why I started to do a lot of that work. My first nonprofit was called Independent Awakening, and it's where we helped, you know, it was a small initiative, but we helped about 10,000 women.
That's not small.
I mean, you know, it was young girls and university, you know, students, and it was a beautiful time to just see that. And I felt like I was also healing the little teenager and girl in
Yeah,
me.
as you are. Well, that's what it is, isn't it? You sort of, with your own experiences, when you talk and you share within a community, isn't that the first step of healing?
Oh, of course.
Just generally.
Of
So
course.
if you are listening and sort of getting so much input from the people around you, and you're kind of almost sharing your own experiences, it's almost like you've come full circle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's definitely part of the journey, I feel.
It's so powerful. And even today, like I was just at a cafe and you know, a woman, she came up to me and she's like, I've been listening to your podcast for so long. And she's like, I have to just tell you, you know, you actually gave me inspiration to leave, you know, and I had 3 kids and I thought I could never do it. And so again, I think that it's just there's never a right time.
No.
There's never a right time, but you actually feel it in your gut
Mm.
of like, okay, wow, I deserve more in my life for myself, not for anybody else, but for myself. And if you have children, maybe it's for your kids as well.
Absolutely. It's the next generation.
Yeah.
And they're watching you.
Oh, they're
full
watching.
on. They've got front row seats to
Yeah.
every single move you make.
Yeah.
And that's the part that is quite jarring, because you think, okay, you know what? They're looking at all these toxic behaviors, and that's not something that I want moving forward.
1,000%.
Yeah. You talk a lot about the bounce factor.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you in that period of your life when that sort of idea generation conception of the bounce factor?
Yeah, so this was actually a big turning point for me. It was the first time I was just like, this was a year after my dad passed away, and I had already lost my mom and my brother, and I was in college, and I was like, I just I can't do this anymore. I can't be here. And so again, it's trusting your intuition. And it was like, all right, I need a sign. I just need to leave. I need to go somewhere. And, you know, in my university hall, in the bathroom stalls, they had these like flyers back then. I'm dating myself. But they had, you know, the paper.
I have flyers in mine too.
Okay.
Especially behind the doors.
And they had the phone numbers.
Yeah.
And you cut it out. Yeah, and then you take a tear out. And it said, the flyer said, study abroad in Europe this summer. And I was at Loyola University, and we had another chapter in Rome. And I said, that's it. I'm going to Rome. That's it. I'm going to Rome this summer. And, you know, I presented it to the matriarchs of my family, my Lola, my grandma, my aunts, my bua, you know, and they were like, absolutely not. There's no way you are leaving. Like, how can you? And I said, absolutely not. And they're like, how could you leave your 14-year-old brother, all of these things? Well, long story short, I ended up getting a scholarship, doing all of the things, convincing them it was great for, you know, college applications and whatever things that was going on at the time, or dental school applications, sorry, I should say. And I literally stepped foot outside of that plane that landed in Rome for the first time by myself, not knowing a single lick of Italian, but just the amount of freedom that I had. and the freedom that I wasn't responsible for anybody for the first time in a long time. That I was now able to maybe not be the girl that had lost everyone.
That sort of what's the word, like anonymity.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, there was this, oh, that's the one that like went through everything, or I know her because my cousin and my brother and this. So it was not a common thing for people so there was a lot of curiosity for a lot of young people. And that's how I was known in my circles back in Chicago. And so the anonymity was huge. And the fact that for the first time in my life, people were from all over the world. And they had different stories and they had different ways about them. And I was staying in a dorm with a roommate for the first time in my life. So just all of these things that allowed me to actually be a kid, a normal kid. And, the very first day where you have to go around in your dorm suite mates, and there's like a whole circle and you're sitting down, and the question that I used to ever dread was, where are you from? What do you do? And like, tell us about your family or yourself, right? And I always hated it because everyone would say, oh yeah, my mom's of this, my dad's of this. And then it would come to me and I'd be like, oh gosh, my parents have died. Like so dramatic and sad. And like, I would want to run away always. And they would do this at swim meets and, dance things, just everywhere for young people.
Just a little background.
It's hard. Please don't do that to these young people. You just don't know what they're going through.
I did ask you to tell me a bit about yourself, but just how you would describe who you are.
But for younger people, it's a
hard.
thing, right?
It's hard. You don't know their backgrounds. You don't know what they've been through.
But in that moment, and that's where the bounce factor started to come in, is, oh, I can make peace with my upbringing. I don't have to share every single detail. And it's not lying. It's just
what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. And you take the parts of your story that you want to come along. You don't have to take everything. And in that moment, that was kind of where I was like, oh, I can be this woman who, this is who I am. And I get to share it with only the people that I want to actually share that with. And so that was, the first step is to really make peace with your past, make peace with what didn't go well, make peace with your upbringing, which is the first part of the bounce factor, so that you can actually build audacious resilience. And resilience is, I recall, I have a vision of this bounce factor being the foundation of your life, really. And you have these 4 pillars. And the first one is what I just shared. But the second one is to be able to give yourself new surroundings and new environments. Like, not that everybody needs to go on a trip to Rome or Europe or like,
you could.
Or leave, you could, but what if it's just changing your environment? What if it's just taking a walk to maybe a different cafe? What if it's reading different books? If you usually read nonfiction, maybe you pick up a fiction book, like just to spark a different aspect in your brain, because what it is it's neuroplasticity. And we know from science that if we are rewiring our brain, we have to train our brain to do different things.
Absolutely.
And for me, that was the biggest flex, because I still have such an affinity for Italy, still to this day. I've been back, at least like 7 or 8 times. And every time I go back, it's like, oh, this, just that feeling, that first feeling of that freedom, because you just remember, of just coming back to yourself, that connection.
Would you say that was one of the most wonderful moments of your life?
Oh, hands down. Hands down. I mean, it's what shaped everything going forward, because it also helped me understand a very important concept that I talk about also in the book, but from, Marcus Aurelius. I did take Italian philosophy, and he was one of the Stoics, of course. And, the fact that, not that they don't show any emotion, but the fact that they have this term called amor fati, and that means love of one's fate. And it was that summer that I learned, oh, I don't have to be ashamed of my fate or what has happened to me. It's probably happened for me. And I think the Stoics got that part right. They loved everything that happened for them. They didn't feel their feelings, which is a different category in itself. But
the concept of
that amor fati, can we love our fate, especially if you're in a difficult season right now? where you need to draw that inspiration for yourself. And that's a beautiful way of coming back full circle, that life is going to life. You know, there's so many journeys in this human experience, but can we love what we're going through even during some of the, you know, hardest moments?
And that's the thing. I mean, generally, I mean, for me, I'm a huge overthinker. And something that I do on it, I'm constantly overthinking everything, especially when you get like a little sucker punch in the gut and think, oh God, life did this. And instead, you know, I feel a lot of the times, you know, you have a potential bad season or something that you feel that has happened that wasn't in line. It sucked. You know, it's just not going the way that you want it to go. And you're upset about it. You're hurt. There's a lot of negativity around it. How, instead of being sort of paralyzed in that moment, how, in your opinion, can you take at least that little micro step forward?
Yeah, I think it is all about the micro shifts.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of micro. I can't do anything big. I've just never been that way as a human being.
I mean,
I do little things and they do accumulate to big ones.
Yeah, and it doesn't, honestly, if you take that big leap, it doesn't last
No, it doesn't.
very long.
No, sort of you just go up and down and that's about it.
Right. If you're saying you're going to wake up, you know, at 5 a.m. and I'm going to crush all of my goals, and guess what? You do that for one day, but you're not going to do that for the rest. It's not going to. And I think those action steps of, like, even today after you're listening to this, you know, just list like 2 things that you would actually do for yourself just this week, you know, whether it's like a 5-minute just sitting in your car by yourself, or maybe texting a friend how grateful you are for them to be in your life, you know, like 2 things.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's true. And I think that sort of applies in every aspect and every facet of life, whether it is a personal, is a relationship, business. I think it's having that 1%, these little marginal adjustments to life, as opposed to, like you said, this going all in on something and then realizing, oh no, I've bitten more than I can chew. And I think that's always, I mean, that's what I try to tell my kids, you know, it's just that, you know, that one extra spelling word or that extra, you know, whatever run, or it's you don't need to do a 500-meter run, you know what I mean?
Right.
You know, it's that extra microsecond second faster.
Yeah.
You know, that's what counts, as opposed to trying to really, I don't know, push it to the ultimate limit.
Yeah. Well, because that's what happens. We then burn out.
Yeah.
And or we lose motivation.
That's it. It's the motivation more than realistically.
Yeah.
You just lose steam.
Yeah.
You are just tired and you're kind of like, oh, I don't want to do it anymore.
Well, and you feel defeated because you're kind of like, oh, I thought everything was going to go as planned. And
life is not like that.
No. And it's that showing up consistency, even when it's hard, because there's going to be a lot of those hard moments. Yeah.
Talk to me about vulnerability. You look like a person that sort of really embodies and takes on vulnerability as, honestly, a bit of a strength.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, it has become a word that we throw around very often. So instead of it being a cliche TED Talk, how can you incorporate vulnerability in the ups and downs of life?
Yeah, I think it's letting people in. And I think, well, just going back to, you know, what the Stoics were very stoic. They were the opposite. Room for it. Yeah, it was the opposite of vulnerability, right? It's like, no one should know my weakness, because if you know my weakness, it's like a chess game. And then
I don't cry at work. No one knows I cry.
Nobody knows.
You guys didn't hear it. I cry in the bathroom all the time.
Right? And so and it's like, just don't. But like, don't know exactly about me, because, oh, God forbid, that's going to give you a one leg up, you know? And I feel like that was kind of the upbringing that a lot of our parents had, right? Because their parents taught them that. And I think we're now learning, oh, when we're letting people in, when I said those 3 words, I need help, that was me being vulnerable. That was me saying, and that's actually a feminine trait. Because masculine, hey, like the Stoics are like, all right, we're going to go battle to war. You can't see my weaknesses. You can't see where I'm going to be hiding or what, right? But when we are actually allowing other people in, and this goes with it takes a village, then other people know how to support you.
Mm.
And I think there was a study that I just read that people who ask the most questions at work are, and even in life as entrepreneurs, are the most, successful in every area of their life. Well, why? Because, and you see this with startup founders, right? Majority of these startup founders are going to, fail in their enterprise.
Yeah.
But the ones that don't are the ones that aren't afraid to fail. They're not afraid to ask questions, and a lot of questions, even if those questions make them feel stupid. Why? Because they are being vulnerable. It's like, all right,
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Help me out. I don't know. Like, let me understand what your thought process is around that. I want to get curious. How do you actually make a decision? How do you actually feel when I share this? Like, how did that land for you, And I think that this is the lost art of, the overdoing, where it becomes toxically feminine. Where we're using it as manipulation or attention. I think that's where it's getting misconstrued. Where, you see some of the memes where people are like crying now on camera on TikTok and all of the things. And it's just like,
come on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I understand that. I understand you want to take us through these really sad, vulnerable moments, but how much of it is performative? And so I think that goes back into checking in with ourselves. And, there's that overcorrection there. But to your point of vulnerability, I think, if you're afraid to let people in, what is it that you're really afraid of? Because are you afraid, some people say, oh, Neeta, I'm so afraid of being judged. Like, what if, they're just going to judge me or not like me because I have this thing or I have this secret, right? Most people have either shame or guilt. And those are the two very low vibrational emotions that we all carry. Well, shame is just an emotion that we have when, we haven't given ourselves permission to actually bring that thing to light that we're so afraid of. And we're afraid to tell that other person, oh yeah, I did that behind your back and I'm so sorry, or whatever the thing is.
Yeah, to own it.
And the thing is like, it can cause disease in our body. We've already seen that in many ways. And so I'm just all about, like, can you actually allow people in so that they could support you? Because you have no idea how that could potentially change the trajectory of your life if you just let others in.
Yeah. I feel like you are a 3 times international bestseller.
I mean 5 now, but
I'm really sorry. 5 times
well, it's
international bestseller. You've obviously mastered the art of taking quite hard parts of life and giving people the tools to be able to deal with them. So obviously, high level, aside from going out and buying your incredible books, what would you say high level would be number 1?
Yeah, I would say just invest in yourself.
Yeah.
Like, if you've never done any sort of work before, find a therapist, go to that retreat that you said you've been wanting to go to, that's been on your vision board, for so long, but every time that gets on the depriority list because you have to do the kids' camps and this and this.
I always say sometimes when I get really upset with my husband or the kids, I'm always like, the totem pole, I'm at the bottom, sort of get back up there, get to the top.
But even if it's, even if it's scheduling it for yourself to just go for one day for just your own, like, what is that you're doing for yourself, your own hobby, your own thing that makes you come alive? Do more of those things that make you come alive. And for some of us, if you're feeling really called to exploring what that looks like, then make it a point to, go to a retreat center or that meditation breathwork thing that, your girlfriend keeps telling you about, or, exploring more of yourself, because the gift that you can give is more of that self-awareness, which is that